Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Hodson, the Executive Director of the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, and we're here out in the petting zoo again this morning for a special edition of Fun with Aviation. And today's subject is going to be our we're going to be doing the FA-18. If you can hear me well, please give me a thumbs up. And we don't have anybody with us just yet. That's okay. Okay, and this morning with us we have Garry Goff. Garry is one of our docents, our lead docents here, and Gary's going to tell us his experience as we walk around the airplane in fighting the F-18 when he was flying the F-15 with the U.S. Air Force. So that's enough of the two of us. So we're going to go ahead and talk about airplanes. So here is our FA-18A model. It is a Blue Angel, and we're going to show you why we know that here in just a minute. Already got a few of you online here. It's good to see you this morning. So what we're going to do is walk around the airplane, and I'm going to ask Garry some questions. Something that he just learned this morning, and I think is going to help with the presentation that you might enjoy, is this particular airplane. Before it became a Blue Angel, and that was a while ago, but when it first went into service in 1986, this airplane was aboard the USS Midway. Gary's first experience with this airplane, with the F-15, was fighting F-18s off the USS Midway. So Garry believes that he may very well have fought this airplane. So Garry, come on, let's just walk around and show folks some detail on the airplane. What was your first impression of the F-18 when you first saw them?
When we first saw them, and we had no idea what to expect from the F-18, but I was profoundly moved at how tight the airplane can turn and its nose authority at high angles of attack, which we say AOA. The aircraft could just maneuver at high speed, at low speed. That it didn't end well with me in the F-15, to say the least.
Okay, so we're going to show you a little bit here in the nose of the airplane, some of the armament. Right up here in the top, we had 20mm cannons. You can see that that exhibit right there at the top. You can see where the guns protruded. And as we move back along the fuselage, we're going to see a few other things that we've seen before. And my gimbal is giving me issues here this morning, so we're going to see if we can straighten that up. So here's a couple of things we've looked at before. Here's the angle of attack probe that turns. Garry, if you want to try to move that back and forth, I think people can see how it moves. And that's how it moves when the airplane's moving through the air, and you can tell what the angle of attack is. Right below that, we've got the pitot tube, and we've talked about those a lot. Then we've got some look like exhaust ports here, and that's exactly what those are. That's for the guns. And Garry, maybe you can talk a little bit about the strakes on the airplane here.
What they do is they allow the aircraft at, like I said, at very high angles of attack and other type flight maneuvers to keep the aircraft stable and the pilot able to control the airplane to do what the pilot needs it to do in an air-to-air combat role.
Okay, that's great. It also allows some of the high angle of attack. We're going to show the nose gear here a little bit. This one is different than the F4. We talked about that one the other day, but there's some similarities. Right here are the three lights that we talked about. The fast, slow, and on-speed lights that the LSO can see when the airplane is coming aboard the boat. The F4, though, we talked about a bridle, some actual wires that were attached to the airplane and dragged it off the airplane. With the F-18, they wanted to change that so it was more controllable and easier to get on the shuttle on the catapult. And that's what this metal thing here, the tongue, is. That would lower down and go right into the shuttle, so it was a lot safer for operation on the boat. Still is today, because these airplanes are still being used. Now, this airplane, the last time it flew was in 2009, and Major Chris Collins, the Marine, was the last person to fly this airplane. It did fly here in Alliance in 2009. So let's go back and look at the engine area. We talked about with the F4 and the F-14 having a variable inlet, but there's no variable inlet on this one, is there?
Nope.
Okay, so this one we didn't have moving parts. The airflow was already pre-planned as it was going to go in through the engine, and we didn't have to control inside and out. So I'm going to show the landing gear here, and then we're going to talk about the leading edge here a little bit. You'll notice this landing gear is unusual. It's not like the ones that this airplane replaced. And this airplane was designed to replace the A4 and the A7, and eventually it even replaced the F4 and the A6, and even the F-14. So you'll notice it's kind of a trailing arm landing gear, and that's to soften the airplane's landing on board the carrier when they're doing FCL or fleet landing carrier landing practices at home. You can see a couple of brackets underneath here, and those are for Sparrows.
The AIM-7 Sparrows, radar guided missiles.
Now this airplane can carry a lot of different types of ordnance, but let's talk about the leading edge here, Gary, because that's really important as to why this airplane is so maneuverable.
When in 1986, when the Midway, the carrier USS Midway, went in to get modifications on its hull, the squadron that flew this airplane stayed at Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, Japan, where I was based in the F-15. And when we got to dogfight one-on-one to practice it, I got slow with this airplane, and it's very interesting. You see how the front end of the aircraft bends down and the aft end of the wing bends down. This big, huge arc here allows the aircraft to fly at a speed of 60 knots, level flight, and move its nose all around. Well, the problem is the F-15 did not have this ability to do this, and the F-15 has just a straight wing, and I could only do 90. So if you can imagine two airplanes side by side, one's going 90, one's going 60, the guy going 90 is going to end up in front, and sure enough, that's what happened to me, and he was able to score a simulated gun kill on me, which was very demoralizing, to say the least. And that's when I learned you don't want to turn with an F-18 because it will beat you.
Yeah, because at that point in time, the F-15 was pretty much king of the roast, wasn't it?
We were king of the road for 14 years. 12 years we've been operational.
So you can see this leading edge device, and that's what it's referred to as an LED, or a leading edge device. And one of the things about the control surface back here that Gary was talking about, most airplanes have ailerons, which make it turn, and they have flaps, which make them slow. In the case of the F-18, they have flaperons. So they both work as ailerons and flaps both, so that they can be used in coordinated flight. So we're going to
eat my lunch.
And eat Gary's lunch, as he put it. Now, we've been told that this airplane has not only been Blue 3, it's been Blue 1 and Blue 5. And we're going to show you as we get around here that the Blue Angel airplanes, although you would think that these are the most, the newest, most modern airplanes that the Navy has, turn out to really be some of their oldest ones. This is a veteran of many different combat missions and cruises on ships. I'm going to show you something here. We have a lot of people that have come out and go, "Oh, this is not a real F-18. This is not a real Blue Angel," because it's just painted up. It's just an F-18 that's painted up. Well, I'm going to show you how you can tell a real Blue Angel from a phony Blue Angel, and it's going to be right up here on top of the engine. You can see that little tiny nozzle up on top of the engine. That's how you can tell if you're looking at a real Blue Angel. And so if you don't know what that's all about smoke, and it's all about the smoke coming out. We don't have a real engine in these, and this is the GE F404 engine, which was a derivative of the engine that was designed for the A12. We talked about that yesterday. But what you're seeing here are the afterburner sections in what is routinely referred to as turkey feathers. And some of the people who will think back about the F4, they really like the howl of the F4 and the noise that the F4 made when it was in the landing pattern. That was all about the turkey feathers and how the air came off through the afterburners. So in fact, later in its career, when they changed the smokeless engines and changed the turkey feathers, there was no more sound, and it was just disheartening to all of the Phantom people. Here's the tail hook again, as we've talked about before. Gary, tell me a little bit about tactics of fighting airplanes.
What we would do in the squadron is you would typically fly every 2 days or every 3 days, and you would spend the whole time training for us, because we were air superiority fighter, all we did was air-to-air engagements. So you'd start off with a 1 versus 1, which is how I met this F-18, and then you would progress from there to a 2 versus 2, and then 4 versus 4, and then unknown versus unknown. And what we would do is we would fly towards each other, and as we pass them, that's called the merge. You would pass the aircraft, and then we would turn into each other to try and get to their high 6 o'clock. Imagine where the pilot's sitting looking out forward, that's the 12 o'clock. His right wing would be 3 o'clock, and the back end of the airplane would be 6 o'clock. And if you can get to the 6 o'clock position and shoot them, that's the ideal place to be. This is when you're training with the 20mm cannons. From there, we train with missiles, both heat-seeking missiles and radar missiles.
Cool, very good. I'm having a little bit trouble seeing the screen here with the light, so if you can all hear me, please give us a thumbs up. I know we've had some sound issues in the past, but if you're hearing us okay, that's good. Okay, I know we're not as steady as possible. For some reason, the gimbal's not working real fun with us right now. So, when you'd go out, I know we taught. I flew fighters for a little while, and we did 1v1s, 1v2s, 2v3s. What is that all about?
That is, let's say, and you'll be designated if you're the good guys, which is the blue air in the Air Force, or if you're the bad guys, you'd be designated as the red air. And so we would train against Soviet tactics, because that's who the threat was back in the 80s. And so the red air would have to fly their tactics, and then we would try and engage them into basically get into a dogfight using our different tactics. One of the most important tactics, you'll see in airplane movies that they show the jets coming in and they're close in formation. In the real world, we don't. We want to be as far away from each other as we can, and typically on the F-15 we would be 2 to 3 miles away, and plus or minus 2,000 feet, because that way, if the bad guy sees one airplane, he doesn't see the other airplane. So your whole idea is that you want to be as difficult to find as possible.
Now, is that what we used to refer to as combat spread?
Yes, sir, and in the Air Force we call it tactical formation.
Okay. I know we've talked about this before in terms of flying formation. So here's what I want you to take a look at. When you're flying form on an F-18, this is going to be a little bit the picture you're going to see. And if you're flying with the blues, you're going to be right in here. They talk about having canopy to wingtip clearance of about 3 feet. I'm actually a little far away, so I'm scared. So I'm in a little bit closer, and this is about where they are flying. The rail of the airplane is going to be right outside the canopy. You may be a little bit further back because it may be putting that little fence underneath the pilot's head, but this would be your formation position when you're flying. This is called a parade position, so you're in close. Essentially for parades, or when you want to get into an airfield and you want to get in there as quickly as possible. So when Gary's talking about combat spread, it means a distance of maybe 2 miles or more between the airplanes. There's also a loose formation, which is essentially like parade, except you're a little bit further apart, and it's just a little bit easier to fly that way. We're going to go in here and take a look at the history on this airplane. And as you can see, this is an FA-18A Hornet. We refer to it here as Blue 3, bureau number 162826. This airplane served primarily when it started out with the VF-195. That's a Navy squadron. Remember, the V is fixed wing, F is fighter, A is attack. 195. It also functioned later on in its career with VX-5 and VX-9, and those are test and evaluation squadrons before it became a Blue Angel. Now, the Marine Corps got these airplanes first, and then the Navy started to get the airplanes. But as you can see, this airplane was involved in a unit commendation, a meritorious unit, National Defense Ribbon, Armed Forces Expeditionary, Southwest Asia Service, and Iraqi campaign. So this airplane has a long combat career and a long career with the Navy before it became a Blue Angel. So the paint on these airplanes is very special. We've had some issues with trying to match up the paint. The Navy considers it to be secret paint scheme, but I can tell you they take these old airplanes, they take out things that they're not going to need, like a lot of the avionics and armament systems, but then they put at least 6 coats of paint on these things, and They just really make them look good. So what else would you like to tell people about today about air combat maneuvering or just encounters with this airplane in general?
The thing that gets me is that I flew against this airplane in 1986. I cannot imagine, who knew back then that I would be now talking about this exact same aircraft. The F-18, after we fought the F-18 and lost a lot, realizing that we were the air superior fighters of the world, I came to believe that this is the best dogfighting airplane ever. Because it was 10 years later than the F-15, McDonnell Douglas took all the things that were good of the F-15, put it in here, and took all the bad of the F-15 and kept it away from the F-18. And this F-18, my gosh, is it a fighter. It is one of the best jet air-to-air fighters I have ever encountered in my life, back in the 80s.
Well, that's terrific, and I think it was really special when I learned last night at history and Gary talking about when he had fought with him that I thought there might be a good possibility that Gary's actually fought against this particular airplane. Now, I can't really see my screen very well, so I'm going to ask Gary to take a look and see if he sees some questions we need to answer.
I can't read it, unfortunately. You got better glasses than I do.
Okay, well, I've got to take my sunglasses off if you can.
Okay.
Just pull them off to the side. Well, but give me my glasses
Right,
back.
I'm going to give you the glasses. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
We've got this figured out. Stand by. Stand by. Putting the eyeballs back on. Okay, he has his eyeballs.
Okay, Alex Durr's watching. Hi, Alex. Always good to see you. Okay, I've got some other stuff here. It really is hard to see the screen here in the sunlight. So, if you've got any other questions, ask them now. Otherwise, we're going to get close to wrapping it up for the day. We just thought it would be interesting for y'all to get a close-up look of the F-18, a Blue Angel F-18, since we just had the flyover here in Fort Worth, and I know people have been seeing them around the country. So this airplane is on loan to us through the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, and it's our restoration group here that works on this airplane and helps maintains it and keeps it up. Let's see. During Operation Desert Storm, 2 F-18s took down 2 MiG-21s. Yeah, there's a story about that, and I'm not certain that's exactly the same one. But the airplanes took off of the ship. They were going to go do a ground attack mission. They were heading inland to their targets when they got jumped by MiGs. Since this airplane has got all kinds of capabilities in terms of fighter escort, air defense, air to ground, all the rest of it, they managed to get the MiG kills, went onto their target, dropped their bombs, and then returned to the boat. So it really proved the all aspect capability of this airplane. So thanks for the reminder on that. Do you still have Christine? Yes, we do have Christine. We did the walk around on Christine a while ago, and that's on our YouTube channel. If you go over there, you will find the walk around on Christine. Christine is special to us. Thanks, Jim and Gary. We appreciate that. And Alex Durr, great info on formation flying. Okay, good. Yeah, giving you the gouge. So
Yeah.
Next time you get a chance to fly an F-18 in formation, you'll know how that's supposed to be done. I am going to tell you a little quick story about formation flying. I was teaching that at Kingsville in Advanced Jetson. I had a student one time that was just all over. He just could not get stable and in formation and stay there. And so I finally told him, I said, wiggle your toes. And he said, what? And I said, wiggle your toes. And he found out that if he wiggled his toes, it took his mind off of holding so hard on the controls, and it relaxed him, and his formation flying smoothed right out. In fact, years later, I ran into him when we were flying airliners, and he says, that's the one thing in advanced jets that I never forgot. If you get a little bit tense, wiggle your toes. So thanks for your support from here at the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home of the most touchable airplanes in Texas.